I recently tied the knot, but unfortunately, my unpredictable mother-in-law decided to cause chaos by inviting my husband's ex to our wedding, all in an attempt to teach me how to be the perfect wife. Fast forward to today, and now her own marriage of 30 years has fallen apart, and she's reaching out to me for help to mend things with her husband and son. She's been trying to guilt-trip me into assisting her, but I'm honestly torn about whether I even want to get involved. For some background, my husband Nick, 27 million, and I, 27 million, have been together for 3 years. My mother-in-law, Tina, has always despised me. Dislike doesn't even begin to cover it. From the moment we met, she made it clear she wanted Nick to marry his ex, Vicky, 27F, even though Vicky had cheated on him. Nick and Vicky had an extensive history. They'd been childhood friends, went to the same schools, and started dating in high school. Their relationship lasted all the way into their freshman year of college, but eventually, they broke up due to the strain of a long-distance relationship. Nick and I met in college, where we quickly became friends, but that was all. Just friends. I had feelings for him, but I never pursued them because of his past with Vicky. Despite their break, I didn't want to step into their complicated situation. From what I gathered, Nick didn't date anyone else during that time either. The breakup was mutual, just a long-distance issue, and he always seemed to want to get back together with Vicky. After graduation, we stayed in touch, but not very frequently. Eventually, Vicky moved back into town, and they rekindled their relationship for about a year. Nick and I lost contact as he focused on work and Vicky, and I was preoccupied with my own job. But one day, I bumped into Nick at a concert, and we started chatting. He was there with friends, and when I noticed Vicky wasn't with him, I asked what had happened. He told me that they'd broken up just a week before the concert, and that Vicky had been cheating on him with someone she met during college. They had been growing apart, and he found out about the affair after reading her texts. After a huge fight, he moved out, and their relationship ended. I felt sorry for him, given how long they'd been together and how serious their families had been about them marrying. We spent the whole concert talking, which annoyed our friends, but we didn't care. That was when we reconnected, and nearly a year later, Nick asked me out on a date. We took things slowly, but it worked out, and within 6 months, he introduced me to his parents. Unfortunately, while his dad was fine with me, Tina despised me. She claimed I was the reason Nick's relationship with Vicky ended, despite the fact that they had already broken up nearly a year before Nick and I started dating. She didn't know about Vicky's infidelity, as Nick had kept it secret to avoid drama with their families. Vicky had begged him not to tell anyone about the cheating, knowing how much it would damage their families' relationships. Tina was oblivious, and I honestly couldn't understand why she still blamed me for their breakup. Regardless, she made it clear she didn't like me and treated me coldly, which Nick always defended me against, but it didn't seem to make any difference. After 3 years of this tension, Nick and I got engaged 8 months ago, and last week, we finally got married. During those 8 months, Tina sulked, but nobody really cared. It seemed like that frustration led her to pull a bizarre stunt at our wedding to steal attention and undermine me, which has been one of her favorite hobbies. At the reception, Tina made a dramatic announcement, claiming she had a special surprise for us. She then reappeared, hand in hand with Vicky. We were all stunned, as Vicky hadn't been invited, and many guests recognized her. I was frozen in shock, and I could see Nick was also visibly upset. Once they were close enough, Nick asked his mom what on earth she was thinking. Tina, without a care, casually told him she invited Vicky so I could learn what a perfect wife looks like. She said it loudly enough for everyone to hear, and I could see the shock on everyone's faces. I could tell that Vicky was thoroughly enjoying the situation and feeling quite proud of herself. She was practically relishing every moment of this drama. That's when Nick completely lost his composure. He erupted, yelling at his mother, telling her that the reason she had been dumped was because she had cheated. If her idea of the perfect wife involved a liar and a cheater, then clearly Vicky fit the bill. Tina, who had no idea about the affair, was stunned by this revelation and fumbled for words. But Nick wasn't having any of it. He grabbed her arm and marched her outside, furious, and no one dared to stop him. Vicky left without uttering a single word, and about 15 minutes later, Nick returned to me. My father-in-law was equally upset, and both he and Nick apologized to the guests for the disturbance, but thankfully everyone understood that it wasn't our fault. People knew that Tina was the one causing trouble. So we carried on with the celebration, brushing off the incident with Tina and Vicky as just a small hiccup in what was otherwise a perfect day. Later, I tried to talk to Nick about it, but he told me there was no need to discuss it further. He had made up his mind to permanently cut his mother out of his life. He'd put up with her antics for so long, not wanting to create unnecessary tension with her since they lived together, and that could affect his relationship with his father. But after the spectacle at our wedding, he couldn't tolerate her mistreatment of me anymore. We planned to speak with his father the following day to let him know we would be limiting our visits because, with Tina out of the picture, it would be difficult to maintain a relationship with her and still visit him frequently. The next morning, when we called his father to inform him of our decision, he surprised us by saying we didn't have to worry about visiting him at all. In fact, he'd already made the decision to ask Tina to leave the house. He knew the main reason we hadn't already cut her off was that they lived together, and it would have been awkward to visit him while being in conflict with her. After the way she behaved at the wedding, though, he couldn't let it slide anymore. He had to take a stand for himself, for Nick, and even for me. He made it clear he wasn't divorcing her, but that they would be living separately until she could apologize to everyone. We were shocked, considering they had been married for over 30 years, but we respected his decision. For the next 2 days, things were peaceful, but on the third day after the wedding, my mother-in-law found a way to contact me. Since I had blocked her, she used a burner phone to reach out, apologizing for everything that had happened. She claimed she had misunderstood the situation, and now, with the truth about Vicky coming to light, she had a different perspective. She begged for another chance from everyone, and for that, she needed me to forgive her and convince everyone else to do the same. At first, I just blocked the new number and ignored her, but then she had her friends reach out to me. She continued pleading, saying that, because of what happened at the wedding, Nick wasn't speaking to her, and even her husband had kicked her out of the house. She couldn't just throw away 30 years of marriage, she argued, and insisted that I was the bigger person who could help fix things. She went on to explain how after Vicky came back from college, she'd sensed something was off between her son and Vicky, but she had wrongly assumed Nick was at fault. She noticed Nick often talking about me when he visited home during college, and when he introduced me as his girlfriend a year after breaking up with Vicky, she had convinced herself I was the reason for their breakup. Of course, she didn't know about the cheating, and I had only been friends with Nick, but in her mind, I was the cause of their fallout. She admitted that she had been so horrible to me because she had wrongly blamed me for their breakup, which had shocked both families. Her resentment was based on a version of events that didn't align with the truth, and she was finally admitting it. While I already knew most of this, hearing her confess it only made me more upset. Even if I entertained the idea that I was somehow to blame for Nick and Vicky's breakup, which I wasn't, it still didn't make sense for her to despise me. Nick was just as much a part of that situation, yet she chose to hate me for something she had fabricated in her mind. She simply needed an excuse to lash out at me. That's why I've been ignoring her messages. I talked to Nick about it, and he told me that I could handle it however I saw fit. He wasn't pressuring me to reunite her with her family. She was the one responsible for ruining her relationships, and it was on her to fix them. After everything she had done, the expectation that I would help her felt entirely unreasonable. It's honestly ridiculous, at least that's how Nick sees it, but my parents don't feel the same. I spoke to them about it 2 days ago, and they seemed uncomfortable with the situation. So I told them to be honest with me about how they felt. They ended up saying they didn't think it was entirely Tina's fault, Apparently, she was just reacting out of emotion because she didn't know the full truth. I was immediately upset by this, but they managed to calm me down and then asked me to try seeing things from her perspective. They made it clear they weren't justifying anything she had done. It was still wrong, but they said she was from a different generation and handled things differently than Nick and I might have. They explained that, from Tina's point of view, it seemed like I was the reason Nick and Vicky broke up, and that I had also ruined a long-standing friendship between their families. Her husband dealt with it differently, but Tina's way of coping was to treat me badly. Of course, what she did at the wedding was out of line, but she didn't know Vicky had cheated. My parents said that I didn't have to forgive her or do anything she asked, but they just wanted me to consider it. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'm still really confused. It's true that Tina didn't know about Vicky's cheating, which is what actually ended their relationship, and I didn't know Nick used to talk about me during college breaks when he wasn't with Vicky. I can see how Tina might have thought I caused a rift between them, but even if that was the case, I still feel like she should have treated me with respect when Nick and I started dating. Now I'm torn. My biggest dilemma is whether we should have told Tina about Vicky's cheating from the start. Maybe that would have saved a lot of trouble. So, are Nick and I wrong for never telling his mother the real reason he and Vicky broke up? As for Vicky, I have no idea why she showed up at the wedding. I don't know what she was expecting. If she thought she was going to get away with it, she was sorely mistaken. And yes, she knew we'd kept the secret about her cheating on Nick. I knew the truth, but I hadn't said anything to my in-laws because I knew it wasn't what Nick wanted. I didn't want to betray his trust, even though deep down I knew it might have made things easier for me. I talked to Nick about it, and he said this was completely out of the blue for him too. He was just as blindsided as I was. After he started dating me, he had no contact with Vicky. In fact, she was blocked everywhere. He thinks she probably just showed up for drama because she's always hated him. Even though he kept her secret about the cheating from his parents, he didn't do that for his friends. They all found out about her cheating, and Vicky lost a lot of them, which caused the breakup. Instead of accepting responsibility, she blamed Nick and tried to trash talk him to anyone who would listen. Nick said that even if they had just broken up for some other reason, Tina still shouldn't have treated me the way she did. There's no excuse for humiliating me, and now it feels like she's trying to manipulate me. I told Nick about what my parents had said, and he agreed that they probably had good intentions, but he didn't think we owed Tina anything, not even the truth. He said that when he told her he was done with Vicky, that should have been enough. She should have accepted it. Instead, she let everything escalate and ended up ruining our wedding with her behavior. He also said that he respected my parents for trying to get me to see her side, but at the end of the day, we didn't have to live by their advice. This conversation gave me clarity, and I don't feel confused anymore. A couple of days ago, I talked to Nick again. After considering everything, I decided to block all the numbers Tina had used to contact me. If she keeps trying to reach out, I'll just keep blocking her and ignore her. I also made up my mind to talk to my parents about this, since they were the ones trying to get me to see things from Tina's perspective. I respect them, so I wanted to be upfront with them about how I felt. It's been a few days since my last update, and today, I visited my parents. I was avoiding them for a bit because I knew they'd ask about Tina and what I planned to do, but I couldn't avoid it forever. When we started talking, they asked what I planned to do about Tina. I told them I wasn't going to do anything. I don't owe her anything. She ruined her own relationships, and I'm not responsible for fixing them. She's treated me disrespectfully for so long, and I'm not going to be her doormat. I told my parents that I appreciated them trying to get me to understand Tina's perspective, but I didn't feel empathetic toward her, so I was going to stay away from the situation. If Nick and his father want to talk to her, they can handle that themselves. I made it clear I wasn't going to encourage or help them repair her relationship with the family. Thankfully, my parents were respectful of my decision. We've always had an open and healthy relationship, so they understood. They acknowledged my point of view, and that was the end of it. Now that that's settled, I can finally focus on my honeymoon, which is in a couple of days. It's been 5 weeks since my last post. A couple of days ago, we returned from our honeymoon. While we were away, Nick and I made it clear to everyone that we didn't want to be part of any drama. We didn't name anyone, but we were obviously referring to Tina and Vicky. Our message was mostly for my parents and my father-in-law, as they were the only ones who might be contacted by them. I'm really grateful that my parents and father-in-law made sure the rest of the family respected our wishes. While we were away, Tina caused a lot of trouble. She realized I had stopped responding to her, so she showed up at my parents' house. When they refused to entertain her, she started visiting other relatives and telling them that I was the reason her son and husband weren't speaking to her. She wanted them to help her fix things. Thankfully, no one bought into it. Everyone spoke to my father-in-law, and he got even angrier. A few days after we came back, he told us he had spoken to a lawyer and was filing for divorce. He had already communicated his decision to Tina. She's not happy about it, but she's still trying to blame me for everything. Now she and Vicky are sending emails and messages to everyone, claiming that Nick broke up with her because he was emotionally involved with me, and that the cheating story was something we made up to make him seem like a saint. They're basically grasping at straws at this point. Vicky is desperate to be accepted back into the family since her parents cut her off after learning the truth about her cheating. Tina is in the same boat, but I don't see either of them being accepted back into the family. Honestly, I'm just glad Nick and I have nothing to do with Tina anymore, and I'm happy I didn't try to fix things for her because I'm sure it would have backfired. Nick and I are happy, and I'm sure my father-in-law will be better off after the divorce too.